Hello and welcome back to day 2 of Practical 365 at Microsoft Ignite. Hello, Paul. How's your day been?
Hi, Steve. My day has been good, but I have to say it hadn't obviously been as good as yours, given that you've got a conference badge and you look right like you're on the show floor.
I am, yeah. Where are you? Are you not here with me?
I got lost. Yeah,
Looks like you're
I'm in quarantine or something.
You're in the petting bit. Is there any dogs down there?
I didn't bring any with me, but if you give me a few minutes, I'll see if I can whistle one up.
I think I've got one over there. Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I've got I'm doled up from last year. I just couldn't resist getting into the spirit of things.
Everybody put that in your session feedback that you want a petting zoo at Ignite next year. We'll see what we can do.
There was one last year. Didn't you see it?
There was. I know.
Yeah. It's just I've got one at home, so right. And a dog. So
well, you're all sorted.
Yeah. Yes. But yeah, I've been getting to the Ignite spirit. I've had a beer already today. Went out for a meal with my best pals. I got the kids to pretend they knew about computers, and got the same sort of feeling that they weren't so happy, but I was.
It's marvelous. It sounds like you hit all the high points of the experience, except picking up crap you don't need from vendor booths.
I've been doing that.
Oh, good.
Yes. Shoplifting possibly isn't the best thing to be doing in the middle of a pandemic, but well, I'll bring it back later.
Yeah, ixnay on the uplifting shade. Okay, in practical news, since this is Practical 365, Microsoft had a lot of stuff to talk about again today on day 2 of Ignite. So let's jump in and get started.
Yes, so day 2 at Ignite was kind of weird because day 2 was also day 1 in a way because it's across different time zones. So I woke up to them welcoming us to the sessions from mid-afternoon yesterday. And of course, there was just so much. And if you listened yesterday, it was 40 minutes. So some of the stuff was actually announced yesterday and then announced today on a sort of rolling basis. Microsoft Stream is the first up. So do you use Microsoft Stream a lot, Paul?
I use Stream quite a bit, and I'm really excited to see the improvements that Microsoft is making because Stream, and before that, Office 365 Video, and before that, the podcasting kit for SharePoint, which is something I worked on in like 2004, 2005 when I was at 3Sharp. There's long been a need for what you can casually describe as enterprise YouTube.
Yes.
Right? Enterprises need a way to be able to capture video data, catalog it, index it, make it searchable, add metadata to make it findable. And Stream was really starting to deliver on that, but it still had some rough spots. And I think all the complaints and pinch points that I had with Stream have been addressed by the update.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've had mentioned to me before is from compliance officers who want to be able to discover and hold that content. And of course, they've got those controls in OneDrive and SharePoint. And we've seen abilities to be able to transcribe, for example, if we put the audio of this recording into Word now, it'd upload it to OneDrive and it would transcribe it. So all of that kind of capability has been coming to the SharePoint platform. And now it's coming to Stream. So I'll just pop this on the screen there for you to see. And effectively, the key thing is all Stream video is going to be stored in OneDrive and SharePoint. In fact, all video files you have in OneDrive and SharePoint today will be Stream videos. Stream is almost like the Office web apps of video.
So it's interesting you say that. I can't quite put my finger on why I disagree exactly with that. We probably don't have time to get Jesuitical about it. But when I thought of this, what I thought of was Microsoft keeps talking about the substrate.
Yes.
Where you no longer care where data are stored. You care about the client interfaces that allow you to access it. I think this is proof of that approach. We've already seen it happen with tasks. I wish it would happen with contacts. There was some discussion on Twitter yesterday about how the contact experience in the Teams client is just not up to par. But the contact data and metadata is already there in a user's Exchange mailbox and in the Exchange gal. And so you think about what Stream can do. wherever all that data is stored, Stream has been good about surfacing it, but having moved that data into the same repository as all the other files and all the other SharePoint data with the same taxonomy, the same information management, information governance tools, that's really going to be powerful. So I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, and you hit on a good point. It lacked that same information architecture people could build in stuff like SharePoint, and that's something that's really key to people that Exchange doesn't have in the same sort of way, but SharePoint possesses. And the big difference, and I'll pull this up on screen here, is the web app for Stream. When you're viewing videos, it's going to look the same. But the video experience by default is you're going to be able to build SharePoint portals, all that sort of stuff, because SharePoint will be the underlying technology for it, a little bit like the substrate. But it's more akin to the Office file viewer than the current Stream experience, which was perhaps more YouTube light than enterprise file management. And the other one is Teams meetings recordings.
Yes.
And this is something that I saw with the Education A1 licenses. They dropped Stream recording. So I don't know whether this is related to this massive explosion in capturing content. And you can imagine freely licensed customers, schools globally recording lessons.
Right.
I'm speculating here. I think it probably put a lot of strain on the service. And this is perhaps one thing that solves that, because they'll get potentially the ability to upload that video back to OneDrive and get the right file viewer. But there's going to be an opt-in experience for Teams where you can move to this new experience earlier as well.
Go ahead. I was going to say that the most
interesting one is sharing. So, yes. Yeah. Have you had any problems with that in the past?
Endlessly. Because one of the most common use cases for Stream is I'm having a meeting with a customer. Some of the customer representatives or the customer people can attend the meeting, but some of them can't. They, for whatever reason, can't make the meeting. I want to record the meeting, and I want those people to be able to see the video after the meeting is over. Well, too bad. It's unnecessarily hard with the tools we have today, and this fixes that. It's just one easy step.
Exactly. And if you've defined your external sharing model for SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, then it's just going to follow that. Right. I think the bit where they've said feedback needed, blocking downloads, that's important because in that school's context, a school contacted me and said that that's an issue that they're having, right? They can't allow students to download these videos to the devices because it's obviously got all the other kids and the teacher and stuff like that, and they call it an issue. So there's going to be some tweaks like that. They recognise that these are things that people need. The other one that we neglected to mention yesterday, I like to think of this as SharePoint gets the OWA offline experience, SharePoint lists, but I think it's a bit more than that. Do you use SharePoint lists or Microsoft lists a lot?
I haven't started using them a lot yet, and that's mostly because when I look at the kinds of problems that I have to solve, honestly, Power Automate is a better fit for most of the things that I have trouble with as opposed to lists. But that probably makes me atypical, right? I see there are so many applications where people are putting lists to work right away that it's clear Microsoft has hit a nerve, right? They've hit a spot that satisfies something people have been wanting for a long time.
Well, we're a big user of SharePoint lists, and it underlies, a lot of things, expenses, systems. The thing I use a lot is something we call a service catalog. So all of our consultancy offerings, hundreds and hundreds of them are quite wisely, and I haven't seen this anywhere else. It's, a lot of work went into it. All of them are documented in the service catalog and templated and so on. Whenever I scroll through to find any of these, because there's so many, the performance side of SharePoint comes into play where you're scrolling down the list and then you've got to wait for it to update. And this is going to improve that because it basically gives you that offline, that local cache. It will work offline, allow you to update and so on, but it'll also give those performance improvements. So you're not scrolling down a big long list of items and then having to wait for the server to to know you're at the bottom of the page and to provide more results. So that'll help me, not on a daily basis, but on a bi-daily basis. It'll be useful to people seeing issues like that, though.
I have really high hopes for Nucleus, in part because, and this is an atypical use case, there's still a couple of cases where SharePoint document library sync historically has not worked well for me. One case is for the Office 365 for IT Pros book that I work on with Tony and Gustavo and the rest of those guys. I am a guest in Tony's tenant using my Quadratec account. And so when I want to work on the book, I log into Teams, switch to that tenant, go to the Files tab, do my stuff. The only way to get that to reliably sync has been to open the Teams file view, file tab view in SharePoint and then sync it from there. And then it shows up in OneDrive. Except every once in a while, perversely, OneDrive or SharePoint or something just says, stop. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to sync, and you can't make me. And the only solution is to delete the sync relationship and start over.
I don't know whether this is going to fix those problems, though, because I heard it was SharePoint list focused. So
it is, and that's a good point to emphasize. I guess what I'm hoping is that this model, if Microsoft is able to successfully deploy at scale local cache-based mechanism for SharePoint lists, then they will be able to do it for other things as well, right? So we'll see. Lists are definitely on my list of things to look at and start poking at to see how I can use them. I just have not done so yet. So this is a nice thing to look forward to.
And one of the team's announcements on the SharePoint track is one that I know some of my colleagues are going to like. And this is an ask is always from comms people versus the collaboration people. They want to be able to bring in that SharePoint intranet experience, communication sites into Microsoft Teams in a way that doesn't involve building a web app or building a Teams app or just adding it as a tab to a particular channel. And I think this is aimed at solving that problem, which is particularly interesting because you'll see what they've got is the application. Assuming you've got an intranet that has been built using SharePoint components rather than all of your own custom gubbins, what it's going to give us is that full navigation bar Teams style down the side, like Teams, like communities for the intranet. So it'll feel like a full native application for SharePoint comm sites inside Teams itself.
It's interesting if you look at all of the different things that Microsoft has figured out a way to plug into Teams.
Yeah.
They've got this enormous bin of Legos, and they keep figuring out new ways to put them together to make cool things. This is a good example. This is exactly what the doctor ordered for the use case that you just outlined. And there was no other good way to solve this problem. Now there is, and it's just a simple snap-in button push sort of integration. Microsoft is really getting good at doing that with different components of the ecosystem and just making them really easy to expose and use in Teams.
So shall we talk more about the security news then this week?
Yes, please, because Lord, there's a lot of it.
Yes.
I'm old enough to remember when Microsoft bought what became the Forefront brand, not bland. And this looks like sort of the same thing happening again, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. So Microsoft Defender, I'll pop this on screen here, is effectively Microsoft's cross-layer detection and response suite. Often some of my colleagues that deal with the cyber stuff in M365 and Azure talk about what Microsoft are doing as best of suite, as in, you combine a lot of the tools together, and then they have that conversation with security professionals who are very much best of breed, where they buy products which sometimes are bought by different teams, overlap, don't work well together. And they're the opinion, and you can argue this until the cows come home, that actually it makes more sense to buy a suite that's really well integrated and got all the tools you need. Mm-hmm. But it's quite problematic to explain what all of those differently branded tools were inside Microsoft 365 and Azure, and how they actually interacted, sent signals between one another and worked together. And of course, branding it as Defender is a logical step because it makes it clear which products interact in that way, which are the products that you would put front and foremost as the products you need, or as a customer, when you look at this and go, what are the bits I need for my top, what are the things I should be thinking about when I combine my security solution together? You're going to look at the ones with the Defender tag against them.
Right. Which makes perfect sense from a branding perspective. It's funny when you look at Microsoft as an organization. One part of it, in this case, the security and platforms team, can do something really smart, and then another part of it, like the Xbox team, can do something like I can't remember what the new Xbox is called, but whatever it is, it confused a hell of a lot of people. This is a good example of Microsoft's leveraging their brand in a really smart way, because this graphic tells you everything you need to know. You buy Defender, and it gives you the opportunity to cover all of these different entry points or different services in your ecosystem, whatever combination you have. It's a really smart decision, because it makes it very easy for a company that already has, for example, Defender on the desktop, or Office 365 ATP, however they end up rebranding that, to then turn around and say, oh, well, I need something to protect IoT. What should I buy? Defender.
Yeah.
Right? Really smart on Microsoft's part.
Yeah, and I think Defender's the right brand, because I'm seeing large enterprises deploy Defender ATP. These big consultancies, they all think it's great. It's hitting apparently it's in all of the security products. Microsoft is the only one, or one of the only ones, in the top right of the Magic Quadrants as well. There might be some that are higher in 2 or 3. Microsoft, I think it's across like 5 of them or something like that, which it's Microsoft. I still have customers going, yeah, but Microsoft aren't very good at security. They've come a long way in a short amount of time. And I noticed a couple of years ago, they went from having sort of Office 365 generalists trying to explain individual products like this to potential customers, and they were good, but they weren't as good as your semantic person or your Mimecast person who was focused on just that product. And then they've got specialists in these particular areas who actually know what they're talking about, have experience at depth, like the competitors, who can talk about this as a full product. They've really invested in not only the marketing, the technology, and this makes sense to me.
It really does. And Microsoft is moving very aggressively to make their security footprint bigger. Last year at Ignite, we heard a lot about Azure Sentinel.
Yes.
And they are starting to deliver on its promise incrementally. And it's easy for the 365 world. It's easy for us to lose track of that, because many of us are not directly involved with that type of enterprise security. But they are absolutely putting their money where their mouth is. And you're going to continue to see Microsoft invest not only in the security features that we see in Dynamics and in 365 as admins and as users, but also in all the infrastructure stuff that every other Microsoft customer, whether they host their services on Azure, whether they are doing internal line of business stuff, everybody benefits from this. So it's a very wise investment on their part.
So the other Defender announcement was the endpoint protection. Now they've all, as you've heard on the podcast in previous weeks, they've got Linux, they've got Mac. They had a preview for Android, that's now GA, and now there's a preview for iOS. They've got complete coverage as well. It's good. Sounds like we sound like a Microsoft mouthpiece. We need to find something wrong somewhere.
Okay, look, we all know Microsoft. Microsoft is great at releasing 1.0 solutions, and then they're just ruthless about iterating until they get it right. And I think it's fair to say some of the things that they've announced. Nucleus is a great example. Nucleus has been announced. They still have to deliver it. We still have to, sort of taste it and see if it's worthy. But if it's not, they're going to do to it what they did with OneDrive. They're going to do to it what they did with Exchange, for crying out loud. They're going to continue to grind away and make it better and better and better.
I'm going to mention a couple more. We're going to wrap up in a second, because we don't want to go for the 40 minutes again.
We're going to give our
you may as well have watched. May as well have watched the whole thing. Endpoint DLP already announced. That's in public preview, and as you can see on screen at the moment, that allows you to extend what was Office 365 DLP, what was originally Exchange DLP, down to devices. And I think that is going to fit where WIP, Windows Information Protection, fell a little bit short in implementation, but was good in theory. Protecting files, sensitive files on the Windows device, keeping track of those and stopping sharing outside of the Office suite. And Cloud App Security, where that can plug in, it can get its hooks into other third-party services from Google and others, and apply what was Office 365 DLP to those services as well. And Endpoint Manager, you'll read the links we've got in the blog for the full list, but there was two in particular I wanted to mention. Microsoft Tunnel, VPN via Intune. Big ask from people moving across from old style MDM solutions. A management of Windows Virtual Desktop devices with Intune as well. Those are the two big ones that stood out for me. But there's a whole list that we'll link to in the blog.
Microsoft is keeping a brutal schedule at Ignite, right? I mean, they're shoveling these announcements out really quickly, trying to compress the normal Ignite schedule. So we've got more to talk about on the Practical 365 blog, and of course we'll have more in our wrap up tomorrow. So I think that's all I have, Steve, unless you have any other last minute treats to throw in.
No, that's it. We'll see you tomorrow.
All right.